Listen, over the weekend, I got a email. I get emails all the time. But I got a particular email from the New Zealand First Party and whoever runs their PR. And it is, their usual sort of review of the week. I think I get them from the Labour Party, I get them from the Greens, I don't never get one from Te Pāti Māori. I think their idea of reviewing the week is, oh, bugger that, it's Friday. Let's piss off until the week, until Monday. And I'm pretty sure they never do it. But I get them. And this one was from New Zealand First, Josh. And the highlight of this, well, there were two highlights of the New Zealand First one, but I'd like to share with you, was defending New Zealand. And there's a photo of Winston grinning as only Winston can grin in Parliament, sitting on his green leather chair, fiddling around with his pen, with his lovely matching suit handkerchief with his tie. Nice, as he always is, magnificently dressed, pinstripe. There he goes. Hasn't changed. And to be honest with you, class never changes, Josh. Class never changes. Anyhow, he's not wearing a hat, Josh. He's not wearing a hat, Josh. He's not wearing a Maori or a bone carving, Josh. He's not wearing a katifa or some sort of Palestinian garb, Josh. You know, there he is in, frankly, a suit that would have looked just as much in place in 1960 as it does in 2025. But there he is, looking resplendent, with a big smile on his face, because he's looking at the other side and thinking, oh my God, you people think you can govern New Zealand. What a joke. And he's looking at the Greens, I think, as he's making that particular glance. Anyhow, the particular headline is, Winston Peters defends our country's name, New Zealand. New Zealand First is staunchly opposed, says the message, to the name of our country being changed without a mandate from the people. So much so that we ensured this is in our coalition agreement. Now, I didn't know that, and took exception to a different name for our country being used in the House of Parliament. Winston Peters defends our country's name, New Zealand, so it's a brave member from the opposition who would choose to use a different term instead of New Zealand. But then he gets stuck into Green Party self-confessed Marxist MP from Mexico, and we all know how that played out. The really remarkable thing about this particular issue last week and the week beforehand was that the mainstream media of this country, and particularly Television New Zealand and Radio New Zealand, concentrated on Winston Peters, not so much defending the name New Zealand and objecting, in strenuous terms I have to say, to the renaming of this country. But it was because he mentioned the country of origin of one or two of particularly the Green members of Parliament, who had renamed New Zealand, and it wasn't so much their speech, it was their questions during question time in the House. As you know, that caused a bit of a cause celeb. There it was, the racism and xenophobia charges levelled at Winston Peters and New Zealand First in particular. And if you've noticed also the sort of shuffling sideways, the non-commentary of National Party MPs who also made up the coalition and who had signed this coalition agreement. But I went back and had a look at this particular issue. Was there a coalition agreement not to rename New Zealand? And yeah, there is. It's mentioned not in specific, but in generalities, that English will be used and that the proper names of government departments and the like will be utilised. But then I noticed in a whole plethora of government websites over the weekend, this is government websites, departmental ones, but also in local government as well, that New Zealand's got three names. If I looked at the official government publications in this country, there is New Zealand used rarely. There is Aotearoa, New Zealand, and then there's Aotearoa. And the remarkable thing is, I've noticed the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon also using Aotearoa New Zealand in speeches as if this country exists. Now, it doesn't. The New Zealand Geographic Board, despite blandishments from various quarters, have not unilaterally or gone out for consultation to change the name of the country from New Zealand to anything else. It is still New Zealand. And we have never, and we appear at the United Nations under that particular name, ironically, New Zealand, and in all international forums or fora, whatever plural of forum you like to use. But the reality is that we are New Zealand to all intents and purposes, except in New Zealand. And it doesn't matter whether it's on Television New Zealand, the state-owned broadcaster, on Radio New Zealand, another state-owned broadcaster, or on a plethora of government departments or of local government agencies. Aotearoa, or Aotearoa all by itself, has suddenly been renamed by the public sector of this country and by the media of this country without, as Winston Peters, any thought, any consideration, any debate, any referendum on this particular issue. Now, I don't mind there being a Maori name for New Zealand. I've got no problems with that at all. Except I would doubt that it was Aotearoa. I'm pretty sure that in 1840, if you'd asked the average Maori chief, and I won't ask the average Maori because he didn't have a voice in 1840, so I'll ask the average Maori chief, or hapu leader, whatever, what is the name of this country? I'm pretty sure Aotearoa wouldn't arrive in that conversation. It was, from what I can work out, a name that entered the lexicon, if you like, of New Zealand in sort of the late 19th century. Land of the Long White Cloud. And really, which is what it means apparently, Land of the Long White Cloud. And when you think about it, it's a lovely, mystical, even lyrical name. Aotearoa, Land of the Long White Cloud, and you like it. Now, again, I don't have a problem if New Zealand decided to call itself New Zealand Aotearoa, because with all due respect, it's one then the other, and it's whatever you are on the international stage first and you're known as, and then you might like to have the Maori translation. That's cool. But you only do it after significant public debate and discussion, and because it's such an important constitutional change, you only do it after a national referenda, where all of us, you, me, anybody who's an adult in this country, has a say in what our country is called. You'll remember John Key went through his personal vanity project when he was the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and it was a personal vanity project. A dreadful debate to have. He got the order completely wrong when he tried to change John Key New Zealand's flag. Do you remember that? And really the impetus that came from government, and particularly from the National Party Prime Minister's office at that time, was to change the flag, very much without there being any great movement in New Zealand to do so. But nevertheless, there was that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we New Zealanders chose pretty overwhelmingly not to, despite there being a good argument that we might try to change it, because we realised that John Key got the order out. He needed to talk about what New Zealand's constitutional arrangements were going to be first, and then you worry second about what the window shopping might be, including the flag of the country. So he got it all wrong, which is typical National, I have to say. I mean, I've been in the caucus, remember? That's what National does. It always changes the front window and leaves the shop, the behind shop, looking exactly the same as they inherited from Labour. So it was typical of John Key to try and change the flag without worrying about the Constitution of New Zealand or its constitutional arrangements and whether or not in 2015 or in 2025 they were appropriate for the time. But that's that's the nature of the beast. You can't change the personalities and philosophies of particular parties, and I'm not suggesting that the national parties should change. They're shop arrangers. That's what they do. But no, here's Winston Peters making a valid point, and that is everywhere he goes, still, and how long are we now gone, Josh? 15 months, 16 months since the government was elected, we're still seeing government departments, local government, which at the end of the day, local government is really, in many ways, under the behest, it is under the behest of central government. We're seeing government departments still determine that this country is a name that doesn't actually have any legal status, nor any constitutional status, nor any official status. You know? So why would we continue to allow the wokery of Wellington to permeate, infect and infest us without our particular say involved? And I would argue yet again, and I know it seems such a small thing, but it's entirely representative of New Zealanders being excluded from a debate, a discussion, and a decision that is made by the managerial, professional, university-educated classes of Wellington and the upper echelons of the law society, the legal profession, although, no, they use Aotearoa in New Zealand as well, and of the public sector in general, including Parliament. So Winston Peters is fighting a fight. He's fighting it, I have to say, pretty much by himself. And New Zealand First are. I mean, they're right to pick this topic up and run with it, because it's not so much the naming of the country that's at issue here. It's the way in which we make the law and make decisions in this country that affect us all. And I'm not an Aotearoan, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a New Zealander. I have been since I was born. I will be when I depart. I will always be a New Zealander. That is how we have been known since that, probably even before, now I think about it, 1840. We were the people who lived in New Zealand. We were New Zealanders. Maori, non-Maori, English, Indian, South Africans, Samoans, Tongans, whatever the migrant wave might have come to this country, Americans, Canadians. We are New Zealanders. We swear our allegiance to New Zealand. We're not Aotearoa New Zealand. But the greater issue here, it seems to me, is yet again 16 months after Winston Peters, as the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, is still having to fight this battle. And I'm pretty sure we had an election that said these sorts of decisions belong to us as New Zealanders. We demand to be included in the discussion and the decision, and we have rejected the noblesse oblige, elitist and managerial view that the hoi polloi of this country, I believe, you and me, are thinking about, and the mass majority of us, are somehow the repositories of decisions made by much smarter, much more educated, and much more aware individuals than ourselves. I don't believe that. You don't believe that. Those are my thoughts today. What are yours?